waiting for K.S. Bakshi and Anand to now initiate.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think K.S. is traveling or something, but now he's going to start that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam,
Sir.
Yes.
K.S. Buller and our Sanjay
Yes,
Jha,
sir.
you make them
Co-host. Yes, I'm making, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, done.
Hello, Mr. Jha.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Sanjay.
Hi, Bulla Saab. Hi, Seema.
Hi. I managed it. I promised you, so you know what I'm talking about.
Sorry, Dr. Bandarkar, I could not follow. Come again?
No, I was speaking, Sanjay, Seema here. I said I promised you, so I managed it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot, Seema.
You know.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
You know, Yatin has also some emergency, but I have requested him, to be here, join us for some time at least. Okay, let's see. I mean, there was some emergency at his end. Hi, Neha. Neha has also joined.
Madam.
Hi, Rituraj.
Nodi, that Rituraj and Samir Parikh, as
Hi,
well as
Samir.
Priyanjali, all you make.
Pardon, sir. Pardon.
Samir Parikh, Rituraj sir, and
Okay.
Priyanjali, you make them co-host.
Yes. Samir I have made. Yes.
Samir, then Priyanjali Rao and Samir Parikh. No, our Rituraj sir.
Rituraj, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
तारिक साहब, अब तो पूरा गैलेक्सी पीछे में लेके बैठे हैं।
हाँ, तो ब्रह्मांड के बारे में बात करते रहते हैं, तो ब्रह्मांड ही तो पीछे रहेगा ना।
ब्रह्मांड के बारे में बात कीजिएगा, 13.7 बिलियन ईयर्स पीछे मत चले जाइएगा। बिग बैंग के टाइम में।
आज का टॉपिक जो है ना, कल्चर, वो वहीं ही सेट हुआ था।
ओके।
संजय झा जी, किसको भी तकलीफ नहीं है ना अटेंड करने में?
मुझको
अभी all have come or how many are pending now? Bhaskar Natarajan is not to be seen.
Bhaskar has not joined.
Yeah.
Let us wait for a few minutes, otherwise I'll call Bhaskar.
No, time है, 10 मिनट है.
हाँ, time है. Neha has joined already.
And Yatin, Neha is there. Seema Bangi has joined, so we'll ask her also.
Seema has joined. Karmistha has not joined. She'll be joining soon. And Yatin will be also joining. He promised me that he'll be here for some time at least. He has some emergency.
And Karmistha.
Karmistha she will be joining.
No problem, no. उनको सभी आप सबको हमारा लिंक मिला होगा, कोई तकलीफ नहीं. Correct, madam?
Yeah, very easy.
Yes,
Quick
yes.
registration.
Yes.
एक नहीं, इतने सारे लिंक मिले कि जितना मर्जी यूज कर लो।
नहीं, वो क्या हो गया मालूम है, हमारा ऋतुराज नहीं, या ऋतुराज साहब ने बताया उनको मिले नहीं है, मेरा व्हाट्सएप उन्होंने देखा नहीं, उनको अभी ईमेल भी भेज दिया 3 बजे, बाद में उनको मिल गया। I don't know.
It is my mistake. I received links, but by mistake I deleted it.
अभी आप है ना, हमारा नाम तो उसमें रजिस्टर करिए सर, आपका बुलाना बात करना बहुत दिन आगे भी रहेंगे।
Sure, sir.
या
As you please.
यस यस, आप सब इतना डिस्टिंग्विश्ड है, हमको जरूरी है ना आपका आगे भी।
Not at all.
यस,
It's all mutual interest.
म्यूचुअल या वही है।
Okay.
हम लुपिन को भी हमारा कॉर्पोरेशन बैंक से कैश मैनेजमेंट करते थे,
I
कैश
see.
मैनेजमेंट सर्विसेज।
I see.
या लुपिन, इफ्का, ये सब, टोरेंट, कैडिला।
Mr. Nirpadi, can we just
Yeah.
go over the format we are going to follow when we start this session?
Yeah. अभी when exactly now 4 o'clock, I will be starting the welcome address.
5 o'clock.
And sorry, 5 o'clock. Sorry, 5 o'clock. Because now in normal webinar 4, आज 5, and it may be 5-7 minutes. And my one colleague Priyanjali will do the introduction, and immediately it will be followed that we'll be requesting Asha Bhandarkar, and she may talk 15 minutes or whatever time she is comfortable. And any one of you or 2 of you can ask any question on her talk if you feel like. And then immediately I will go to the first round of panel discussion, and we will have 40 minutes for that. And Mr. Sanjay Jha, after that, there may be 5 minutes for any question which is coming in the question box or in that chat box. And Sanjay Jha will take later. He will do 40 minutes. And with that later, again, 5 minutes question answer. And then it will be final welcome, or what you call Thanksgiving matter. That is over.
No, there are 2 panels. So how are they divided? Which is coming?
वो
Panel A first?
आपको अब संजय जी आपको ग्रुप में लगाए थे, आप देखे नहीं था?
मैं आज दोबारा से रिवाइज कर रहा हूँ। आज वो तो ग्रुप में बड़ा कुछ लिख रहा है।
वही सर, आप हमारा ग्रुप में है, आप और भास्कर नटराजन, यतिन छड्डा जी और सीमा बांगिया हमारा फर्स्ट पैनल में है। और कर्मिष्ठा, ऋतुराज सर, डॉक्टर समीर परिक एंड नेहा will be in the second panel.
Yeah.
मैडम, इवर संजय जी, आप एक कर्मिष्ठा को फोन करिए ना।
हाँ, मैं कर रहा हूँ।
या
Bhaskar has joined already.
Yeah, Bhaskara, yes,
So,
join. I will ask him
yes,
to
yes.
Madam Bhaskar Natarajan, you give him what you call host, sub-host, co-host.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi, Bhaskar.
Hi, Neha.
Good evening. Welcome,
Hi,
Bhaskar ji.
everyone. Hi.
Good evening from my side to everyone.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Good evening.
Yeah, Karmista has confirmed she'll be joining in 2 minutes.
Very good.
Sir, I have another account login under my name only. Can you make that also co-host? I'll be sharing the screen from there.
Yeah, you ask her that her name is our Rupali, no? You ask her, she will do it.
So when we start the panel,
Rakshmita, you make both the thing as a
Yes,
co-host. Okay. And
Priyanjali ma'am's, no?
Yes, both. There are 2.
Yes, already made, ma'am.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
Priyanjali, you take a
So,
photograph
yeah,
of all the people when they are like Seema will
Yeah,
now come. Seema, put
Mr.
your
Bullar
video,
asked question.
take a photograph.
Yeah, Sanjay.
Hello.
So I still feel we did have this discussion today. When we start the panel discussion, what is the form? What I remember all of us talked that day was that in a panel there are 4 people. Each will talk a little bit about, share their own views on the topic. So after that, what will happen? I'm not sure. After we have gone through each person talking briefly,
Sir,
what is the next step?
We had in your group earlier, संजय जी आप और एक बार ग्रुप में लगाइए, 3 मिनट आपको वो theme of the conference बात करने के बाद there are 4 or 5 questions which are listed by Sanjay and myself, which he has shared in the group. Out of that question, he will be asking each one of your panel to dwell on that, or maybe individually or collectively also.
So like I opted for 2 questions, 5 and 7.
Sanjay was noted. हमारा इसमें ग्रुप है ना, हम नोट करते, don't worry. वो ये पूछेंगे आपको, ठीक है?
I have one submission to make. I have not joined the WhatsApp group for some reasons. So if there is something that I need to know, Sanjay, kindly let me know.
Sure. So let me quickly tell you that, we have still 5-6 minutes. So, so there are 4 panelists in team B, and you are also part of the same group. So, and let me tell you who all are there in it. So, Karmistha, you are there, Rituraj, Samir Parikh is there, and Neha Khade is there. Okay. So, four panelists, and there are questions. So, what I have thought that I had indicated to Neha that we'll go in the sequence. I have enlisted the questions. So I might ask you, let me tell you that, often we talk about this different great companies culture. Is cultural benchmarking really helpful? So that's the question I may ask you. Okay. Otherwise, you can also choose to speak. So preferably, as Mr. Buller said, that, we can choose to make it free. See, the only problem in making free flowing is that it will be difficult for us to manage time.
No, don't make it free flowing. That's what I was trying to ask. What's the structure? Don't make it free flowing. Otherwise, there'll be one guy who will not stop talking, and you won't know what to do.
Yeah. So we have already listed down 12 questions, which I had shared already.
Yeah.
So we are going to ask those questions.
So that's a good format. So we know that only the questions which we have volunteered to answer, we are going to be asked by the panel to talk. Whenever the indication comes, we will talk.
Yeah.
So is it possible, Sanjay, for you to direct message me those 12 questions?
Okay, sure. I will send you.
Because I got a little confused about this group being for specifically this purpose or generally another group. And I wanted to avoid joining another group.
Okay. No worries. I'll immediately send you.
Sanjay ji, there are already about 14-15 people waiting in the waiting room. Do you want to allow them in? Who's taking charge of that?
That is our. I am allowing. Don't worry. I will allow.
Okay.
Yeah. And all will be allowed. The moment now we are already near 5, so admit all. Lakshmita, you admit all, huh?
No, sir. Shall I admit?
You should admit all.
Admitted, yes.
Okay. And as the people come also, you will be doing, no?
Yeah, sir. We will remove the room, sir. Automatically.
Yeah, you remove that. I saw continuously they will come now. You can remove that.
Yeah, remove, sir.
Yeah. We have around 350. Rajendra ji, welcome. Ganatra ji.
Thank you very much, Dr. Narendra.
Yeah. So we have more than 350 registration, but because of the office timing, a few will come little later also. They will come. Okay.
Yeah. Narendra sir, very good evening. This is Ramesh Polur from VDS.
Yeah. I saw you. Welcome. Milan ji. Namaskar, sir. Very आपका हमने सभी अभी म्यूट करने वाला है after a long time.
Who is going to manage time? Because that will be very, very important for.
You are there, man. I am there. Why you should manage and I should manage? We have to manage together. Yes.
So we'll keep reminding, and yes. I hope nobody will mind.
When I am talking, you manage. When you are talking, I will manage.
So we are at 5 p.m. Shall we?
We are starting. We are starting now. Madam, you are already put into recording, no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you can mute others all. So, yeah. Good evening to all my esteemed panelists and our keynote speaker and all other participants. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to extend a hearty welcome to all of you on behalf of myself and behalf of the NCube collaboration. We are always grateful to all our participants whose inspiration and motivation makes us to bring this type of webinar with the full purpose of knowledge imparting. And in the COVID period, this organization started with the objective of the same dealing with banking, insurance, debt market, IBC, stress assets, or Indian economy, and such other international trade, series of such webinars. And we are more than 33 webinars we have collected. Parallelly, I thought that some of the basic like organizational leadership or leadership, as well as on the current topic, culture and the unique culture, again, sound unique culture as a driver of competitive advantage. These are also needed for our corporate success, for our India success. So it is in this regard, today's webinar has been organized, and we are extremely grateful and welcome Professor Dr. Asha Bhandarkar, who is the distinguished professor from Indian Management Institute, IMI, New Delhi, and whose guidance and training to all of us, but along with the Dr. Preetham Singh, particularly in our corporation bank or in Bank of India or IOB, where all I work, and for so many bankers, has led us to inspire leadership. So we are grateful to her. And similarly, we have a very distinguished, panelist here. And we have K.S. Buller, Richraj Sir, and Neha Karde, Samir Parikh, Bhaskar Natarajan, Sanjay Jha, and we are Seema Bangia, and also Karmishta Mitra, and Yatin Chadda, a panel of 8 speakers, and led by me and Sanjay Jha as the moderator. So today's topic, all of you are aware that it is that unique culture which gives distinctiveness or specifically a DNA to all organizations. And from historical perspective, as well as from the current perspective and the future perspective, those unique culture which is pursued, practiced, and implemented and enhanced, that gives a distinctive advantage to organizations. It is the combination work of all the stakeholders in an organization in pursuing that, as well as get pursued by the market and the regulators or customers, employees, or the stakeholders, and even the government. That leads to that uniqueness. So it has to be ongoing, it has to be enhanced, it has to be, if required, a few modification also, and a particular change. But consistently, you have to keep the your unique purpose, core values, and that will always enduring in nature. And even the country is proud of such companies, because these companies becomes the global role model. And those companies, every employee feels proud and he feels that I should be part of this. Even the customers will patronize that company because he also feels I have my connectivity to this organization has resulted in material value and other ethical value or whatever value to me also. So that is what, if it is in a definition, there are so many definitions. So it is the accepted norms, values, ethics, and traditional behavior of group. It evolves over time, and each country has its own beliefs and values and activities. So geographically, and it is not a religious as such, but what are the society also plays an important role. So in one definition, culture by Deal and Kennedy is the way we do things around here. So the leaders will ensure that they are done in a different way, in a distinctive way, and a unique way. The company culture brings employees together and helps to propel everyone reach the organizational goals. Madam, next slide. Yeah. So this is some statistics by Steam Stage. All of you are aware this is a great company we engaged in recruitment and all. So most of the 86% job seekers avoid companies with a bad reputation. Particularly millennials, young generation prioritize culture fit above everything else. So sometimes they always feel happy and they maybe even join at a little lower level also. And that's what whenever campus recruitment, you would see how these millennials prioritize their preference. And company culture is an important factor of 46% of job seekers. Having highly engaged employees can lead to a 202% increase in performance. So this also visible, and there are quite examples to that. And 69% employees who work harder if they received more recognition. That's why the reward system and what type of recognition and how do you give a sense of ownership to employees. And each time you pat them, you give them, incentive alone will not be sufficient. How do you give them encouragement and you really acknowledge that it is the employees' contribution and their engagement and their collective wisdom that resulted in value proposition and the performance. So culture that attracts high caliber employees leads to a 33% revenue increase. And receiving a best place to work, I've seen in quite a lot of top corporates, they are very particular about this type of award, and they celebrate it and they work for the next year also. Madam, next. So if these are all the role of corporate culture, everybody can know it, and there are quite a lot of such books on that. So good corporate culture have higher employee engagement rating. Culture is a long-term commitment to excellence. That is the one very important. And some of the Indian company also have done the long-term, and they are always, the founder's vision and mission along with the core purpose and value. They always value it. So a good culture reduces attrition rates. This is also very important, and you could know, always we ask what is the attrition rates. And a sound culture improves credibility and public image. Corporate culture involves accepting and celebrating diversity. A rich company culture leads to innovation, very important today. And a good culture helps attract higher quality candidates. And company culture provides a marketing advantage, a competitive advantage, and an unending advantage. In the sense, it is the company will always win. So there are different, I don't wish to now, the clan culture, adhocracy culture, and all like the different. So how to create a good corporate culture? Improve the work-life balance, hire right people. This is very important. I always suggest that while you have the hiring pattern, our own people should be there, and we must have because it's a great investment in the uniqueness of the people we recruit. And that uniqueness should be maintained throughout their lifetime, life cycle. And such people always remain, sometimes they become the employee of the life. So in such culture, employees will always remain. We are all, some of us, of course, today it's very difficult, but even if for whatever period remain, they become the employee of the life. So make personal growth a priority, merge company goals with personal goals. Both are for a institutional value proposition and individual value proposition, both are together. And providing job safety and security to employees, empower employees, putting trust, faith, very important in employees. And any aberration coming need to be immediately found out, and corrective action should be taken. And this trust and faith will be all, and feedback from the employees should also be means ascertained, and you should value the feedback. This should be both the ways, top to bottom, bottom to top. And study your company and find your best mantra, innovation, innovate. Yes. So the next is, of course, these are all some of the company practices in India. See, if you are like, now Southwest Airlines, this is one of the big example. There can be Apple, there can be Google, and they set up those companies, including some of the great consulting companies, which are Accenture or whichever bigger one coming to India. They exhibit that in their action also. It is not merely a tagline which propels that good culture or unique culture, but it is in their exhibition or exhibiting that value, demonstrating the value. Godrej Consumer and India, Tata Group per se, everybody knows. They are, we should be grateful to the founder of Tata, and today subsequent leaders have continuously enhanced, and even the current Chandrasekhar in TCS and the Tata as a chairman, along with the Ratan Tata's guidance, how the Tata Group is. So I have just, because it is a visible, we have to talk about that. And next. So these are all some small presentation, and I would now like Priyanjali, because I know the time, very briefly do the introduction of the speakers, because as Sanjay said that we have to maintain the time. Priyanjali?
We have taken 13 minutes time.
Yes. You are not told anything in between. Anyhow, Priyanjali?
No, I showed you this. I will show this as a timeout.
Okay. Thank you. Priyanjali, you are there?
Sanjay, I suggest you need a bell. Use a bell.
Priyanjali, do it quickly.
Yes. Thank you so much. Allow me to introduce our esteemed panelists for today. We have Mrs. Asha Bhandarkar, a distinguished professor of organizational behavior from IMI Delhi. Dr. Bandarkar is a psychologist by training, a management professor, a coach, and counselor by passion, and she has a strong voice for diversity at the workplace. She is well known in her field of leadership and HR as a scholar, consultant, and researcher. Prior to her current assignment at IMI, she was the Raman Munjal Chair Professor of Leadership Studies, as well as Dean Research and Consulting at MDI Gurgaon. She has received numerous awards, has published 9 books and over 40 research papers and cases. We have with us Mr. K.S. Bhullar, Advisor Group HR, Anand Group India. He is a senior HR professional with over 40 years of experience. Currently, he is the advisor for HR to Anand Group, Jindal Power and Steel Limited, and Asahi Glass Limited. He superannuated in April 2017 from the Anand Group after completing 42 years of service, where he retired as the Group President HR and member of Anand Management Committee. Mr. Bhaskar Natarajan, he is a performance consultant and coach. He's certified, a professional certified coach with 22 plus years of cumulative experience in designing, executing leadership development solutions for CXO and top teams. He is currently also a research scholar at XLRI Jamshedpur, India. He served the Global Board of International Coach Federation as a director. We have with us Mr. Yatin Chadda, CEO, Delhi NCR Circle of Indus Towers.
Yatin has not joined. He could not join because of some emergency at his end. So you can proceed. You can skip Yatin.
So we also have with us Mrs. Seema Bangia, Chief People Officer, Mahindra Agri Defense and Aero Sectors. She is a member of the Mahindra Defense Systems Limited Board of Directors. She is heading human resource function of both domestic and international operations. She has more than 30 plus years of industry experience. She is a certified coach from Ericsson Coaching International. Mrs. Karmishta Mitra, she is the Group Head CLO, Axis Bank and its subsidiaries. with 25 plus years of experience in FMCG, IT, consulting, manufacturing, financial services industries. She is currently working as Senior VP Human Resources and Group Chief Learning Officer, Axis Bank and its subsidiaries. She recently has been accorded as CLO of the Year by Business World People. Mr. Rituraj Sir, he's the Vice President of L&D Lupin Limited. For over 30 years, Mr. Sar has delivered cutting-edge talent management and learning solutions across the world, spanning geographies and industries. He is recognized as a domain expert and has been frequently awarded for sterling contribution to people development by various global forums. He is also invited to be on the board of studies of different universities. Dr. Samir Parekh, Consultant Performance Enhancement. Mr. Parekh has over 35 plus years of experience across multiple business verticals. He has been a visiting faculty for IIM Calcutta and various other management schools. His specialty has been a study involving the use of emotional intelligence in sales leadership. His work has been appreciated by various leaders in the field. We have with us Mrs. Neha Kharade, founder and director of Incubate, leadership partnering firm. She is a seasoned HR leader with over 26 years of experience. She has led various leadership roles in large progressive Indian multinational with cutting-edge HR practices in the areas of talent management, compensation and benefits, employee engagement, business excellence, leadership development, diversity and inclusion. Along with Narendra sir, we also have with us Mr. Sanjay Jha as the moderator. He's the CHRO Mahindra First Choice Wheels. With over 30 years of work experience in the field of operations, TQM, TPM, HR, and sales, he is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt and certified ACC level ICF coach. He has worked in the iron and steel industry, telecom industry, chemical and automobile industry. Prior to joining Mahindra Group in 2010, he served for Tata companies as corporate quality head. With this, I'd like to hand it over to Narendra sir.
Thank you, Priyanjali. Now we are really fortunate and proud that we will be hearing Dr. Asha Bhandarkar as a keynote speaker. Madam, stage is open for you, madam.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Narendra ji, for inviting me and saying so many nice things. I'm truly flattered. I hope if half of it is true, it'll be fantastic. I'll be a fantastic person. Anyways, I think a topic which ought to have been discussed for a long time, but which is typically in the background, is the topic of culture, unique culture, as you put it, as a source of competitive advantage. Because all the work done in the last few decades, and it's not a secret, brings out that unless you deal with culture, unless you create a suitable culture, you will not have, number one, not only competitive advantage, but also sustainable competitive advantage. So I want to compliment you, Narendra ji, for bringing this topic up as an important one, the topic. And in this particular context, I want to appreciate it. The reason being that we are now entering in all businesses into an area of, tremendous competition driven by technology, tremendous competition driven by, IT, so many factors which are helping. So if you were competitive today, 3 months down the line, somebody else has an edge over you. So it is also fickle and also dynamic. And in this context, the only source of competitive advantage, which is enduring, can be people. And paradoxically, in today's context, attrition rates continue to be very, very high. In IT sector, for example, I read about some top companies, without mentioning them, the attrition rate is as high as 18 to 20%. And many of them shift jobs. For what reason? You may think they're getting a substantial raise or something. No. Many times they're going for the same job, for the similar job, I should say, and similar kind of a, compensation. And if you try to understand a little bit more, what is it that is, the push factor? Why is it that people are leaving? On the one hand, we are talking about the importance of people, because when we say culture, who are we building the culture for? We are building it for people. Why are we building that culture? To retain people for a longer time and to get the best out of them in that particular company. We are way past, obviously, the era of, lifelong employment, commitment, long-term commitments, so on and so forth. But I think we are all now accepting the point that millennials and the incoming Gen Z are going to be changing maybe 5-6 jobs at least in their lifetimes. And therefore, for us in the corporate sector, the challenge would be how to retain them for a long time. And number two, how to get best out of them for whatever period of time that they're going to be available. So this is where culture becomes important. And I mentioned attrition only to say, evidently, most companies are not focusing on culture. Most companies are not focusing on culture. And because of that, I think attrition is one of the outcomes of culture, because what I understand is when I talk to people and when I see the research, people are leaving their bosses. When we say people are leaving their bosses, evidently we are talking about their styles. So there is a disconnect between the styles which worked at one time and which are no more giving the result today. And we need to understand again how it connects with the culture, because leader is the face of the culture of the organization. Bosses are disseminating the culture. If the boss or the leader, I'm not saying both are equal, but boss or the leader, let us say on the one hand says, oh, I need brilliant ideas. And when people are coming up with ideas, I will say, okay, shut up. So you can see that we are talking about the need to have consistency between what the leader professes and the practice, because culture building is hard. And culture is built by, focus on a leader's style, people's expectations, and aligning many factors of the organization together. For example, we are used to having in large companies, large banks with tall hierarchies, right? And then we say we have to be speedy, we have to be fast. How is that possible? Your structure, your reporting relationship itself is not allowing speed. So that's what I mean by the need to align the structure of the organization with the culture. Now, what kind of cultures are our people wanting? Our millennials and the Gen Z, which is coming into the workplace now. What do they want? So a few years ago, myself, Dr. Preetham Singh, and a team of ours, we had done a study. We have published the research in a book form. It's called Millennials and the Workplace, Challenges for Building the Organization of Tomorrow. What we found is young people are expecting the following. Number one, freedom and autonomy at work. Very simple, freedom and autonomy at work. Number two, they want to feel respected and valued. And number three, they want psychological safety. That is, they want to have a context where they feel free to try, take risk, make mistake without being, without feeling unsafe or without being, their career being affected in some way. And so if our people want this, people want to have such expectations. I'm talking about the major ones, okay? The whole bunch of expectations. For example, fun workplace, this workplace, that workplace, a leader who is more participative. This is a fourth important one, leader who has a more participative style. Okay. So if all these things we look at as a bundle and we compare this bundle with what is the typical style, things are changing, companies are changing, it is a gradual process, but I hope that the change happens in a bigger way and a larger number of companies create a work culture which is more conducive to the needs and requirements of the workforce. And why is it that we need to do this? Because it is these people who are going to drive your agenda. If your agenda is to be highly competitive, if your agenda is to be highly innovative, because in today's context, it is the innovative, it's the fastest, it's the most customer centric, which is going to be having an advantage. So if we need to do all this, we need to prep our people. And this is where we talk. I'm not talking too much about work culture as a phenomena, because Narendra ji has given 3 slides, I think, on what is work culture. But I just want to make a point that culture is something you realize what it is or more in its absence than in its presence. So you are working in X company for a few years and then you change jobs. And especially if you've changed across sector, you say, oh my God, things were like this there, things were like that there. And many times I've heard HR people say, oh, our company is so good. People who leave want to come back. That wanting to come back is the comfort level which you have had in the way you have been functioning in your previous organization. So all I'm trying to make the point is context is tough. Context demands innovation. Context demands speed. And context demands a certain kind of a result. So to do this, we are dependent upon our talent. And to take care of our talent, we need the right kind of work culture. And work culture can be reinforced, can be perpetuated by the behavior and style of our leaders. And this work culture will perpetuate, will be successful only when it is aligned properly with the structure, systems, processes, and values. And finally, a beautiful statement, and I will close because I have been told very politely by Narendra ji, from 10 to 20 minutes, which means he wishes I stop at 10. But he says, okay, if you want to go on some more, please go on some more. So I will stop. It's almost, I think, 12 minutes or something. Only by saying that there's a famous, quote attributed to Peter Drucker, which goes like this. It says that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And when we say culture eats strategy for breakfast, what we are saying is no matter what big strategies your companies plan, if it has to work out, you better focus on the right culture. So strategy and culture also have to be aligned. So thank you, everybody. I'll stop now.
So thank you, madam. Really very great beginning for the today's webinar. And a few of our panelists, if you have any question, I would request you, but within another 5 minutes. So one, I will start, madam, that we always say that culture is a top, from the top, it has to start. But I think even the middle management, or they can also start the culture, or means they can also pursue the culture better. So in this hierarchy of culture, where do you see that how both will converge?
Okay. So per se, theoretically, your point is fine, that culture building can start at any level. But practically, people observe people in power.
Correct.
And if there is a disconnect, they are not going to accept it as the right culture, especially in a kind of a paternalistic or hierarchical kind of society that we live in. People say, okay, big boss is not doing it. Oh, this is just one of those things which HR is bringing in. Ye to chalega nahi jyada.
Yeah, correct. Thank you, madam. So, any Sanjay ji, Hamara Neha madam, you have any question? Or Seema, both are very much with the preference to our women panelists. Seema ji.
I think before you ask me, Mr. Buller has something. I see him on the screen.
Everybody, Buller ji, bataiye, ek do question.
I've got one question to Mrs. Bandarkar. You just mentioned that the Gen Z we are now in a time where there's going to be no lifetime employment, etc. Okay, so therefore attritions are going to be higher in the Gen Z. Then how do we know when they're engaged? What is the parameter we should look at to see that they are engaged? Because attrition is not the right parameter for them.
Yeah, so this whole topic of employee engagement, which has got flavor in the last decade or so, I think it is only the tip of the iceberg. Deeper than employee engagement is the development of the right work culture. And if you look at our incoming Gen Z, I mean, you can even see today, I mean, people in my family, my nephews, nieces and all, they don't want to work full time. They don't want to work hard. They talk of work-life balance. And especially now, the COVID generation, as I call them, they are completely unschooled to ways of working in a corporate world. I mean, imagine that for 2 years, Mr. Buller, people have been studying online, and we believe we are creating leaders, we are creating managers. So there are tremendous anomalies which have happened because of the larger context, tremendous anomalies because of the kind of environment in which, generally better economic environment in which children have been brought up. And it is, your point which you're making is right. It's getting tougher and tougher to be able to fulfill and therefore retain people for a longer time. And I'm visualizing a situation when you may have, see, the psychological contract is breaking. Psychological contract between the company and the people is breaking. And therefore, what I'm seeing is in the future, companies have to have multiple forms of engagement. Engagement meaning, not engagement, types of work.
Yeah, so Bandarkar, I just said exactly what you're saying. I just wanted to point out there has to be a different measure we should look at when we are looking at Gen Z, because attrition per se is not going to answer whether they're engaged or not engaged. Okay, that's the only point I wanted to make. Yeah.
All right, please.
मिलन जी करत जी, आप बड़ा इंश्योरेंस, गवर्नमेंट इंश्योरेंस कंपनी का चेयरमैन रहे थे, आपका कोई है, बिकॉज यू मेड अ प्रैक्टिस, बैकअप प्लीज अनम्यूट मिलन करत, पॉसिबल? Lakshmita? Anyhow, otherwise to be continue, madam, you have anybody? Sanjay ji, आपका कोई क्वेश्चन है?
Sir?
Hello, you can unmute Milan Karat.
I'm only focusing on time at present.
Okay. It's okay. No, madam, we have to respect her, all that. No? But if you have any, so as to continue the subject only.
I did not say what I said. I'm focusing on time. That is what
Bhaskar Natarajan is one of the youngest here. Come on, Bhaskar ji. Kuch hai? You can unmute yourself, Bhaskar. Nothing. Huh? Bhaskar Natarajan has not been made a co-host. Madam?
Co-host.
Yes, I got it now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Narendra. Mrs. Bandarkar, thank you so much. That was a wonderful summary in just few short minutes. You spoke about autonomy. You spoke about psychological safety. In my work, I see increasingly people are kind of wanting that as a basic requirement. And that's deciding, whether they are staying with the organization fully engaged or deciding to become a gig economy worker. Yeah, very astute observation, madam. Thank you so much for your sharing.
Just a quick point in reply to what you said. I'm currently doing a work on toxic leaders and its impact on subordinate emotions. And I'm talking to all young people. And the definition of toxic is changing. If you raise your voice on young people in public, it is not seen as an admonition which a previous generation would have accepted. Now they're saying that, okay, So he has insulted me. No, the word is humiliated, not insulted. Humiliated me in public. And so I am withdrawing from the work. Just an input to what you said.
Thank you, madam. So I will, with your permission, I will proceed to the panel discussion.
Sure.
And we, in the first panel, we have K.S. Buller, he is available here, and Bhaskar Natarajan. Yatin Chadda, I think, not able to join, and Seema Bhangia. So I would like first to give each one of you on the uniqueness of the culture as a driver of competitive advantage, 1 or 2 minutes of your opening comments. So I would now request Bullarji, आपका opening comments.
Okay. First of all, there is nothing, the statement that is sound unique culture as driver for competitive advantage, there's no quarrel against it. There is no other option to look at it any way. And I will just say that I worked in a group for nearly 40 odd years. And there was something they did, which was maybe way back 35 years ago. They coined a slogan, which still continues in Anand. It's called business is 90% people. And the entire philosophy and entire focus on people was built around this one statement. And the second statement was that you have to, educate people so that you're adaptable, you are learning all the time. And there was one quote which I'll always remember, and I would like to repeat it. If you think education is expensive, try ignorance. And that's the philosophy with which Anand Group has worked till now and has been very, very successful. Yeah.
So next is our Bhaskar Natarajan.
Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to quote 3 instances that many of you may be aware from the recent past in the media. It got reported widely. On 5th of July, 2022, a private airline staffers took a mass leave to attend an interview of another airline.
Yes.
It became a viral news and many started talking about culture, right? So that's one incident. The second incident is on 30th April 2021, Justice N. Anand Venkatesh of Madras High Court, he attended counseling sessions before giving a verdict on same-sex marriage. He got himself educated on LGBTQ issues. And he said, if I don't know the issues, if I don't appreciate what the community is facing, how can I pronounce the verdict? This is the second incident. The third one is about in Bangalore, a customer falsely accuses a delivery boy of a famous platform, and the platform stood by him because they believed that the woman is wrong, and that became a viral news again. So I just picked these 3 instances to showcase how companies and employees together are focusing on culture. And going by the topic, I feel 3 P's need to be focused on: purpose, people, performance. We have to go back to basics. Gone are the days of call center and the Google kind of work environment, which would attract many people. Now the thing is settling down, I believe. While that is getting more attention in the media, but people are saying, how did that affect me? What is that I am gaining out of these perks? Is it helping me any kind of freedom at work to choose what I want to work on, or people whom I have to work, would like to work with, and the kind of impact I'm creating on the society through the company I'm part of? So entrepreneurs, business owners, if you're on this session, these are the things that you should look for: purpose, people, and performance. In purpose, how do we align those whom we are recruiting, their vision, their personal vision that they want to lead an impactful life to that of the organization? And in terms of people, are we creating a culture where respect, psychological safety, autonomy, all of these are abundantly available through rituals and routines? Even as simple as how do we conduct meetings? I still remember when I was part of Tata's, the brand custodian of Tata Group, Dr. Mukund Rajan, when he was chairing a meeting where people were from different geographies logging into a conference call, and there are a bunch of people in the conference room with him physically. And he took personal interest in ensuring everyone on the call felt included. By observing his behavior, I realized that how important it is to look at the basics. The basics is where the culture starts. It's not about the PR or a good marketing that we do. For example, recently I was talking to a leader who posted a joining kit his company gave. And I asked him, hey, that's really nice. You feel welcome. He says, no, my HR asked me to post it. Okay, so you realized, how these are orchestrated to showcase that the employee experience is good, but people can, see through the difference. And the last one, performance. How do we handle non-performers? So, for example, Netflix, if you Google their culture presentation by the founder, you will find a 125 slide deck available for all of us to see. It's an updated version also available on their official website, jobs.netflix.com, where you can see they have defined their culture in 9 simple terms. And they're talking about, this is what we are, no apologies, right? For example, we hire only A team players. We don't tolerate non-performers. We give them a hefty severance package with respect and ask them to leave. So I'm just giving some examples. Likewise, Zappos, and these are American companies. We have examples. Even in India, when Mr. Narendra opened, he talked about Tata companies. Being part of Tata Group for almost 7-8 years, I know how different companies have a very simple Tata Code of Conduct uniting them. A Tata Code of Conduct, one of the very important values, respect for every individual. Whether you are an entry-level employee or a senior vice president, doesn't matter. In meetings, you can't be yelled at, you can't be shut down from talking and so on. So these are the simple things. When we go back to basics, handle rituals and routines, we can have a unique sound culture that becomes a differentiator in the market. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Very good. The purpose, people, performance. Very good. And that is the core aspect of our sound culture. Seema Bangia, can you just give opening remarks? Yeah, welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, all of you. Very interesting. I have lots to share, but due to time constraints, so I'll focus on 2-3 points because Asha ji and before me, Mr. Bhular and Mr. Narendra and now Mr. Natarajan covered almost everything. So for me, culture means soul and organization means body. So if your soul is not there, no matter how beautiful your body is, what kind of your joining kits are, what kind of your policies are, they are just on the periphery, It's not about the value system which you have. So focusing on that, and I agree with the point that every organization have their own unique culture, and it is very unique to organization, every organization. And question is, how can we feel culture? So culture is something which is there, but not there. I mean, it's like air, So how can you feel it? You feel it through the behaviors, how your leaders lead by example, not only for performers, how they also treat non-performers. If they have to make someone exit, how beautifully, how respectfully we have those exits executed. So I mean, every activity, every action speaks about the culture, the value system any organization has. So this is what I believe in. And back to you, Mr. Narendra.
Thank you, Seema ji. I was really impressed that culture is the soul, and the body gets the what you call activity, all that only through that core soul. So we have to value that, and you really, because there are quite a lot of examples also. So now Bhular ji, that how much nuisance of the culture of an organization can be documented, because this is a very difficult issue. Madam also said it could very know how to get it and how for a consistency, and how much it can left to the interpretation of employees, and what are the forms of communication, how that travels for the breadth of the company. Bataiye Bullarji.
See, it's a mix of both. There has to be a certain form of documentation, but not over documentation. It should be simple. For example, maybe in 5 or 6 statements, you should be, that the top leadership should be communicating what is the culture that they value and they live by and they demonstrate. Okay, so answering that, only 5 or 6 points. It cannot go down into too much of too much of detailing to the last. Therefore, then you have to leave it to the employees to interpret it firstly on their own, and then you will keep on talking about this at forums that are an opportunity to talk about it. But the main thing is not only just talking, it's the leadership, what they're demonstrating, that walk the talk or whatever you may call it. Are you demonstrating those behaviors on those 6, 7 things? What is far more important is how much time the top leadership makes themselves accountable and they sort of discuss, are we doing what we are asking people to do? Okay, so I would say rather than documentation, what is far more important is, does the company have processes? It can be simple thing, even like a retreat. Top leadership going on a retreat and saying, okay, let's rediscuss, are we demonstrating our culture that we are wanting people to develop, what we need to do differently so that we set the right examples. This is far more important than being worried about are employees interpreting it correctly or not. They will interpret it correctly if the leadership shows the way and demonstrates it.
I have the example where long back when I joined the bank, my boss, who joined fresh from another bank, he took us on one Sunday, the entire team, smaller team, and it is in the 1970s, 70, 74, 75. And as he rightly said, not only his vision and mission also, and the employees became very friendly with this, what you call, freedom given, and they could understand each other. And that, of course, resulted milestone approach in performance. So, आपने retreat का बात किया है, this is also very important because the formal work environment may not give that much opportunity, and you need to really come down to the level where the employees expect you to be there, and that will help. So, Abhi, Seema ji, that what could be the reasons, there are a lot of impediments come in culture getting executed, and even a best cultured organization, whatever may be the reason, sometimes the leader he is not a right fit there. So many things can happen. So what are those which doesn't result even business impact also? So can you, because your own experience, and if there are some example also, or because the example may be a little difficult to say pinpoint, but because being your experience, kindly dwell on that.
Sure, Mr. Narendra. Examples are many because I worked in many different cultures, Japanese to Americans to European and now Indian, each country has its unique culture, right? And so is each organization. Now, what it doesn't work in any organization? Let's say we have value mission, everything is very rightly displayed, written, drafted, but when it comes to execution, how well is it executed? And it starts from your acquiring talent, when you do your talent management, when you hire people, what kind of people you are taking, are they matching with your value system? I think that part somehow we not do so thoroughly, the way I've seen in other countries where they take 2 hours, 3 hours for just interview process. Here we have to do quick interview, 15 minutes, half an hour, we all have so much of target on us. I remember I was on the interview panel for, I won't take the company name, one of the best top companies, IT companies, and they had to hire students, So we were given that, and within 10 minutes, you have to decide on a candidate. So what were we doing in that? We were compromising on checking that part, whether there's a culture fit, not culture fit. It's just that you're checking the skills, you're checking the experience, and then you're taking in. I think that's where we miss out. So culture fit is important. And also rightly said by earlier panelists that, and I also believe personally that it is, most of the time it is top driven. It's never bottom up. Bottom up is in like when they have to follow. And like Asha ji said that people observe people in power. Absolutely. How they lead by example. So this is what from my side. I see one hand being raised by Mr. Ganatra. Yes, please, Mr. Ganatra, you have a question for me or you want to add something? You're on mute.
Unmute him. Someone has to unmute him. Mr. Narendra, please unmute.
Okay, Rajendra, can you put that in a question box now, or you want to talk because we are yet to complete the panel? We'll come back to you. Yeah. So, Bhaskar-ji, that madam also mentioned that during the COVID period, by working from home and all that, it may be an administration part of that, but it will not truly reflect the culture and and also what type of role the leader played and how did he demonstrate and sympathize or empathy or all that. And I think you have quite a lot of points on that area. So why not? And from there, how they are now again picking up. That is very important. That when the normalcy comes and so in terms of the unique culture and the cultural practices, what are some difficulty came during COVID and how that has been now again enhanced? Yes, Bhaskar.
Thank you. Yeah, COVID was a black swan event which reset many organizations and made all of us to look hard within our practices, our rituals that we have and routines we have and so on. And one point which was made earlier by many panelists, including Mrs. Seema, is leader. A strong leader is important for a strong culture. In addition to that, now the importance of middle layer is also coming out, because if you don't have a strong middle layer supporting the top leadership, it's so difficult to handle such a distributed, geographically diverse, neurodiversity. There are 38 different diversity topics are being talked about now. To handle such a huge, change, it's very difficult to have at the top everything, the power concentrating on the top. So the missing middle layer is another thing which is surfacing for the culture. How can middle layer be a custodian of culture and they start role modeling to the entry level and people who are in the lower end of the pyramid by showing themselves in front of customers, how to carry themselves and so on, because top leadership cannot be everywhere. So that's one point on the holocracy. That's the movement. How can we democratize? How can we make sure leadership is distributed and not concentrated at one or few pockets? The second thing is, I want to quote Mr. Satya Nadella, who is the chairman of CEO of Microsoft, in one of the interviews with Adam Grant, Work Life, and this is the TED podcast, where he talks about, if you want to make others cool, join Microsoft. If you want to look cool, join elsewhere. So I found that as a very powerful statement. In one sentence, he summarized the culture of the organization, such a vast multi-geography organization. He summarized. The second statement that he made, which also caught my attention, is growth mindset is like a godsend for us. From know it all, we moved every employee to learn it all. Earlier, Microsoft was fighting amongst divisions on who is the better team, and customer was the one who's suffering. Now, 8 years, the Glassdoor review of the company and or even stock market, there is 700 times appreciation of stock because of this shift in culture. From I'm a techie person, customer knows nothing, I know everything. And from that position, they all shifted en masse to learn it all. Oh, customer may be right. I want to know more about what the customer is facing. How can I fix it? So the entire movement from software-based company to a cloud-based company, just one caselet, we can see how culture shift can be top-driven, supported by the middle layer. And middle layer, I mean, the importance cannot be overemphasized, because they are the ones who carry this vision down and make sure everyone in the organization is aware of it. The second example is about there is a keeper's rule or keeper's promise, where as an employee I can go and ask, this is in a particular company, I can go and ask my boss, if I were to leave, what would you do to retain me? Right? And the boss is also asked by their bosses, if your team member is about to leave, what would you do to retain them? If the answer is no, I would not do anything, then why are you keeping that person? Or why are you not giving feedback? Why are you not helping them with performance? So this question became a culture defining question, right? These are the things that we need to talk about as stories. When I was part of a telecom major earlier in my career, we used to talk about values and ethics as a strong pillar. One of the tower was in a land owned by a relative of a vice president, and that person did not disclose it at the time of awarding the contract, and HR had to ask that person to leave. This story was often repeated during induction. That set the tone for everyone on integrity, values, and so on. So these stories at the time of induction, even Seemaji, you spoke about how much time we take to interview a candidate. Whether the selected or not, the candidate should leave with a positive impression about the organization and the culture, and self-select themselves. Oh, this culture, I'm not suitable for it. Good, I did not get selected. Or if I'm getting selected, I don't want to be a part of it, I decline my offer. Similarly, before joining, many probable candidates are looking at Glassdoor and many other websites on how is the culture? Who is my potential boss? What people are talking about my potential boss? Then they are deciding to join or not to join. So culture plays a huge role. A unique culture plays a huge role in attracting, retaining, and growing talent.
Thank you, Bhaskarji, because at the customer experience point or at the grassroots level for a customer, any person who is delivering that himself is the culture, he himself is the final organization itself. So as you rightly said, the top has a responsibility and accountability. How did they properly communicate? But the middle management plays a very important role, and the field staff. So that is a very point you brought, and you given good examples. Seemaji, Abhi, this culture with the change of leader or with the changes happening globally or through any disruption, what are those areas by which culture needs to be changed? I am a firm believer the core culture and all should not change. But we also found the other part by some leader totally forgets the pursued a culture and does something. Now, there may be necessity for change also. So when and all that change is needed and how that change should be brought in and how you have to get the acceptance of all stakeholders in the change. This is my question, madam. Seema, yeah.
Thank you for asking this question to me. I think if you look at last 2 years, the pandemic brought a lot of changes in the way we function, way we think. Maybe we are reimagining things. We have to look at things in a very different way. I'll give you an example of hybrid working. We never thought that we would work this way, right? So how is culture linked with this new style of working? Let's stick to this example of hybrid working. So what is culture here playing a role? So culture says you are engaged, you are independent, you have empowered as long as you deliver the set results or expected results. Wherever you are, doesn't matter to us, right? So let's say tomorrow we have another leadership. They say, no, we want you now, pandemic is over. We want you 9 to 5, 9 to 6 in office, in person, and do it. So this shift which has happened over the last 2 years, and now with this new leader coming in, and I'm sharing this from a very real-time example. Okay, I won't take the company name with all due respect. And I see now people, employees not liking this. They say our culture shift happened. They started believing in. Last 2 years, we were performing, we were delivering, and now why they want us in person. So is culture static? Is it dynamic? Is it, it is carved in a stone there and not moving? Is that a question we have to ask? And according to me, my personal view, culture also needs revisiting, reevaluating, according to the times, according to the situation, as long as we are sticking to our core value system. I hope it answers your question, Mr.
Yeah, madam. That's what he wanted, that it should be a combination of the core culture and leadership. In order to achieve that, he has to imbibe his own cultural fitness to the other employees. Abhi, K.S. Bullerji, that every leader has to show short-term performance, medium-term performance, and long-term performance. Now, at the same time, he has to ensure the what you call your employees' engagement, and he should also ensure customer delight. So, in this situation, how the culture factor can ensure the interest of all or the entire stakeholder value proposition, and similarly the shareholders, so that short term vis-a-vis medium and long term. Aapka experience se bataiye.
Okay, first of all, anything that is long term is something that will never get done. And you are seeing that happening today in the world. I think we recently read that article somebody had shared, what's happening to the global warming. A lot of talks. Everything, everybody says, okay, the next generation can face it, we are okay. Same thing happens in the organization. And here, I would like to answer your question a little differently. For every employee, the top, you see, we keep on talking about top leadership is going to make the culture. Okay. And that's a very nice way to hide ourselves from our own responsibility to make a difference. Okay. I would rather say, create islands of excellence within the area of influence that you're working in. Because for the people working for you, you may be at middle management, you may be at senior management. And that's where I'm trying to answer what Bhaskar is raising. That at middle management also, you got people reporting to you. For them, you are the top leader. For them, you are the company. How are you creating that culture in that area of influence that you have got? Are you creating an island of excellence? Then you are going to go places. But you're going to wait for the top leadership to make a culture? Fine, keep on waiting. You will retire waiting for that. So instead of just talking about culture, cultures are great here, cultures are great there, I would say a sound culture, let me tell you, is very simple. I think I think many of the speakers have listed it. There are just 3 or 4 things. Respect for people, give them empowerment, and recognize them. That's it. What's so great thing about it? And walk the talk. Can you do that within your area of influence? And I would say many of the participants who are in this webinar today, even if you go back and try and do this, you would have got your return on investment of the time you're spending today hearing all of us talk. Just go back to your area of influence and create a culture of excellence in your area of influence. Stop waiting for other people to change things for you.
Fantastic. So that area, circle of influence or area of influence is a very pertinent factor. Now,
Narendra ji, will you just permit me one sentence? One sentence.
Yes, madam.
Because again and again, we're talking about leader and, as we're talking about one person sitting at the top, the difference we have to make is it's not about a leader. It is about leadership of the company. Top 100, it could be top 200, it could be senior, it could be middle level, all talking the same language. That's all I want to say.
Yeah. Which is that the collectiveness only speaks of the company. So it is not the single alone. So Rajendra ji, what is your question?
Well, it's been fantastic hearing such wonderful thoughts. As I see, I'm just going to make some couple of sentences I would speak, and then I would ask a question.
Very minimum space time.
Absolutely. I see culture is something where there is a clear focus. There is a proper process, the HR process, business process, a proper communication and a respect. Fair enough. I have done it myself. I will not say what I achieved as a result of that. But I have one worry here. See, when you're talking of culture, you're talking of everything. You're talking of maximizing the value of the firm. You may call it equity, maximizing value of the equity or the enterprise, or all stakeholders will not get into that, but maximizing the value. And that means that you are at the top of the curve, technology curve, and we are nowhere. Let's face it. So where are we lacking? And that's here Seema Bangia mentioned about the country's culture. We really do not have technologies. We'll not, again, that's another big subject. We have fantastic companies. In fact, IIT Bombay has released the successful technologies developed in its incubation center. I'll share with you. You can share with others. Beautiful, very impressive. But technology development by the institutional technology development cannot be replaced by individuals. So what is that which is lacking in the Indian corporates and the Indian as a country? Just one more thing. If you look at, let's say, ISRO's achievements have been fantastic. One could still debate about the payload issue, but it's very, very precise. I feel that, the goalpost was very clear. The goal was clear and they were empowered. But how about BHEL and others? So what are we going to do to improve our technological culture, without which we are nowhere? We are the only country which is so big, which imports technologies repetitively and also oil. Right? We are like a loss-making company.
Okay, thank you. Time. Yeah, Rajendra. Yeah, anybody would like to give answer to this? Anybody, Bhaskar?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Well,
what is saying? Individual leadership versus technology. Bhaskar?
Sorry, maybe I'm not understanding.
Anyhow,
any other panelists can do that, yeah.
Okay. Why don't we ask Mr. Rajendra to now ask his question in one line?
One line.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take slightly more than one. All this exercise of culture is meant to maximize the value of the business. And technology is an inseparable part of that. We are nowhere in technology as corporate and as a country. What is to be done to achieve this ultimate objective? That's it.
Thank you.
Cultural.
Okay. You, Rajendra, you unmute karo. Mute karo. Yeah. Vallarji, any answer?
I think the topic is too broad. It is in a different direction.
Yes.
He's talking about, as a nation, we on technology front, we are still importing technology, etc. Are we building a culture of innovation? Are we building a culture of in-house development of technologies? That's a different. So he's talking about, as in India, as a country, we are lacking that culture of building our own technology, which is right. Of course, a lot of things have to be done. Some good beginning have been made. He mentioned ISRO, etc. Okay, so I think that's the answer. It is again a challenge the country has to face.
As the country adopts Industry 4.
Yeah, and probably the country to benchmark is Israel, which has probably proven to the world. Israel and Taiwan are two countries which have developed so much of technology because of this innovation culture they have within their country.
Okay. So I have a time because I do not wish the Sanjay ka time hum lene ka nahi. So one question, madam also can answer me, Asha ji also. What differentiation we find in culture in public sector versus private sector? And everybody don't give that value to the public sector, even though they are the innovator and they were the first to do everything. So why public sector lags behind in sometimes culture or even in cultural value proposition also? Anybody? After that, Sanjay ko dene ka bhi. Madam?
I think you're provoking here.
Yes.
So what is there in public sector? Kyun puchte ho aisa?
No.
Fundamentally, yeah, I'll respond.
Yes.
Fundamentally, what I see is because public sector is subject to a different set of rules and regulations because it comes under the ministry. So there are certain things which are challenging for public sector, but that does not mean that public sector should be blindly be just bureaucratic, because the public sector also has to be result focused, right?
Yes.
A whole bunch of things need to be done starting from the board level, I think. And what I've seen in my research is that boards have to be not just focusing on compliance, they should also focus on performance. The day that happens, the signal in public sector in the manner of functioning will change. Thank you. That's a brief answer.
Thank you. Yeah, this because very important in the current context, privatization as well as public sector, all that. So even the stock valuation or various things, and organizations completing 150 years also, still they are get not. So anyhow, it's a matter of debate. Now, Bhaskarji, I will come back a little later because of the time. Now, I do not want Sanjay to say. So with thanking all of you and also the lively discussion which has come, so many points. Now on another area of some of the leftover, mainly very important area, because Sanjay will be starting with the other 3 or 4 panelists. Yes, Sanjay ji. Up.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Mehrpari, Dr. Bandarkar, and the eminent panelist of Group A, so to speak. Now, let me welcome the Group B panelists here. And the panelists are, so to speak, can I see their faces? I'm not able to see their faces. My friend Karmista, Rituraj sir, Samir Parekh, and Neha Khade. I am not able to see them. Okay. So I would like
Sanjay
to kind
ji,
of follow.
Sanjay ji, change your view to grid. Change your view to grid.
Okay. That's the reason. Yeah. Now I can.
First, Sanjay ji, you complete. They are in the next here only. They are there. You.
Okay.
And I request.
So I am going to use the same. I would like to start with the same approach used by Dr. Mehrpari, and would like to ask the eminent panelist, how a unique culture can be competitive advantage for an organization. So let us go one by one. Who would like to start? Let me rather ask, to manage, Rituraj, yeah, please, go ahead. Rituraj, please unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Not able to unmute? Can somebody help unmuting Rituraj? Sorry, I'll come back to you. Karmista, would you like to start? In the meantime, please unmute Rituraj. Yeah. Oh, you're not able to.
Yes,
Dr.
I have been
can somebody,
unmuted now.
Now Rituraj is unmuted. Sorry, Karmista. Sorry. Yeah, Rituraj, please.
Sorry, Karmista. So quickly, no, I believe when you speak, you age, when you listen, you grow. Thanks a lot for letting me grow for last an hour or so. Quickly in Lupin, what we've been doing is culture in this manner. Number one, ours is a fast growth culture. Been there with Lupin soon going to start 17th year. And based on this, one has been a small little contributor towards 10 times growth of Lupin in this time period in terms of top line, bottom line both. So the culture has been of fast growth. Number two, this is a culture of long innings. People here work. So if I'm here for 16, 17 years, no surprise, people have been around for 20 years, 25, 30, 35 years, and been doing very, very well for themselves. They are among the best in their respective domains. So long innings company, that is the culture. And culture number three, I'm just saying three highlights of this culture, what makes Lupin what it is. And so I'm bringing it alive rather than sharing my concept. This is how it is happening. This has been witnessed over the last 16 years. And third is that this is a company, as a company, very open. We're very open to scrutinizing ourselves, questioning ourselves, and we invite who's who of the consultants, whether it is Accenture or it is McKinsey or it is Deloitte or it is BCG or anybody, you name it, and we have them as our partners over last, been our partners for the last 10 years or 2 years or 5 years, things like that. And not only these, all the new joiners also, we quickly onboard and ask them to actually suggest ways and ways of working that can be better than what we are doing right now. So we are a very open company. And these three things, fast growth culture, long innings culture, and openness to really adopt new ways of working really makes Lupin what it is today. And apart from these three things, what are the key two things that actually make it work as comparative? Answering your question, Sanjay, is that a very high degree of accountability of managers in PMS process and transparency in PMS process. So we all know about PMS processes and the kind of fate they meet. But yes, definitely managers being held accountable very high level, as well as being made a very transparent process. And finally, the other component of this culture is the high level of respect and recognition. So whether it is through ESOPs being shared with everybody right from top to bottom in the company pyramid, it's not to select few hierarchy levels based on their performance and potential, obviously, or it is about on-the-go conduct that you've been doing and practicing values of Lupin, 6 values of Lupin. So there are DBG, Deshbandhu Gupta Spirit of Lupin Awards that are given to people, or it is on-the-go awards being given by peers. And there are so many things like culture in terms, just to give one example, and then I shut up. On this mobile phone, every morning before I start working, I have to submit the answer to some questions that indicates my health. This has been started during COVID time, and now we are finding it very, very useful because it has 2 benefits to employee. Number one, employee feels very connected with company. Employee feels company is concerned. Number 2, employee feels a big, big bond with company. So no matter wherever I am working, whichever part of the world or this country, I feel every morning before I start the day, company asks me to fill it up. There is data being generated for more than 20,000 people on every day, every morning before we get set out for work. So this is an example. And finally, there was a beautiful question that Kullar sir had asked right at the beginning about what is the latest metrics, what it needs to be, etc. Just a small one on that. Enough of engagement tracking. I think we need to get into really knowing that we are experienced managers. We are not engagement managers. So we need to provide experience. In fact, the term experience has changed its meaning now. Experience is no longer that, I've been 30 years experience. Experience is what am I giving to you right now through this speech. That's experience you are getting. And that experience is in moments. How are you managing your experience for your employees is actually what is going to be the latest and the current metrics. Employees are shifting gears. We need to as well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Viduraj. Are you able to unmute yourself? Dr. Merpadi, can somebody unmute Karmista? Or otherwise, I'll then go to, sorry, Karmista. I'll go to Samit. But in the meantime, can somebody help Karmista unmuting?
Yeah, I will unmute her. You first ask somebody else, I will do her. Yeah, don't.
Samir.
Thank you, Sanjayji, for firstly for inviting for this particular session and also giving me an opportunity to speak. I'm going to try and be very crisp. I'm going to start off. Firstly, I'm not going to get into trying to look at what is culture and then etc. etc. So I'm going to first start off by, at the risk of disagreeing with Professor Bhandarkar, say that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I work with culture change and I create strategy for changing culture. So now this is a vicious loop. So what's going to change? Am I changing strategy? Am I changing culture? I've got into an absolute vicious loop if I actually believe in that. For that matter, you know what? This statement has become so popular that there's this book called Kaufman and by two authors, by Kaufman and Sorensen, who have actually written a book on this exact. The title of the book is Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast, and it's become a bestseller, right? Essentially, what they've talked about is engagement. So I mean, is culture engagement? Is culture something completely different? It's something that we actually, I think we who are more in the people business, we need to really, and I suppose that's everybody, we need to understand that. I want to resonate a lot with Bhullar Saab. Bhullar Saab actually brought out a wonderful point that if it is culture, it's not only leadership. It's also how I align to that leadership, right? So in chapter 6, verse 5, and Sanjay ji, you know, I keep going back to the Bhagavad Gita for everything. So in chapter 6, verse 5, he says, Uddharet atmana atmanam na atmanam avasadayet. Do you pull yourself up by yourself, take responsibility, take accountability for yourself. If you are not going to be accountable, then there is no culture. Culture is a collective. Culture is not only leadership. Yes, leadership may set the tone. Leadership may set direction, but I have to flow with that. And we keep talking top down. Ganga to Gangotri se hi Ganga Sagar jayegi. Ulta to nahi bahegi. Ye to hum log ko sabko pata hai, right? So I am going to come back to saying, how do I work with culture change? So there are just three words that I work with. I talk with define, align, and monitor. That's all. Now this sounds very simple, right? Cricket is very simple, just batting, bowling, fielding. No, it's obviously not that. So when you say define, I am correlating that with the topic of today with the word unique. When you are defining it, are you able to create that uniqueness that sets you apart? That's number one. So in resonance with what Rituraj said, you work towards that and you actually work towards creating that uniqueness. That's number one. Number two, when you talk about aligning, it's about getting everybody, the collective, to work towards that competitive advantage. So that's the word that competitive strikes for me. And finally, when you say sound, to me, it's sustainable. And when you say sustainable, that means it has to be monitored. We are all management people and we then say, no, right, inspect what you expect. So if you're not going to inspect, if you're not going to monitor, and there are methodologies, right? Simple things like lagging culture. If you have a lagging culture, just imagine how much time do you spend in meetings? That itself is a definition, right? I mean, you go back to Business at the Speed of Thought and you start off on the first chapter and he says that a meeting that goes beyond whatever, he's defined some things, but that was his perspective, Bill Gates' perspective. But when you look at that and you say that if a meeting goes into endless loops of discussion, and then those meetings have so-called accountabilities, and then there is no action taken, you already are in a lagging culture, irrespective of whether you are people-friendly or not people-friendly. So there are these indicators that we need to work with. So that's, I would say, my viewpoint right now.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. You know, when Dr. Meher Padi thought about this panel discussion, he offered me, would you like to join as a panelist? I said, no, that will be really difficult. You know, I should rather act like moderator, but I'm finding moderator's job is even more difficult, in fact. Okay, Kalmista, sorry, I mean,
yeah.
I kept you waiting.
No, I think beautiful conversations and very, very thought triggering. You asked a very powerful question, Sanjay, called how is culture a competitive advantage, right? For me, it is, we are a very large organization of 85,000 people. And I really see culture is, of course, technically speaking, so I will possibly layer it in three ways. And of course, whatever everyone has said, how beautifully comes together. So I'm not summarizing or repeating or quoting anything because they're all in context. So one is culture is really about N is equal to 1 today, right? It is really about the individual's experience of the culture. That's becoming very, very important and critical. And maybe in the last 2 years, as I talk to people, right from youngsters to very senior leaders, everyone has had such life-changing experiences that today, and the Great Resignation is possibly also an outcome of that, right? And some of them are saying there's also great return, but the Great Resignation is also because people suddenly wanted to explore the various dimensions of themselves that they figured out. right? And if we say culture is a culmination of the behaviors of people, it's a culmination of the processes that we run, the style of leadership that we have, whatever we say, our appreciation of each of that is N is equal to 1 today, in my view. And, I'm doing some inciting, I'm doing some research, I'm doing some work in our organization. What we are very interestingly realizing that in most organizations, even if you are plagued by 18-20% attrition, it is usually not an all organization phenomena. So if you have, let's say, 300 business leaders, it is essentially being driven in 25 to 30% of the team. So maybe 75, 80 leaders teams, where you see this phenomena. The rest of the organization is doing good. But since good news travel much faster, it seems there is an overarching problem, right? And hence it also, needs redressal. So second is hence after N equal to 1, it's really about the leadership style. And if it is matching with the individual experiences of people that you have, because right now we are a 4th generation or 5th generation organizations. The third area that I think comes to my mind is how do you really tackle it, right? If that is what it is, then how do we tackle it? So there are 4 things in my view which becomes important, and I'll possibly quote a little bit Peter Senge here. He's my favorite. And Mr. Parekh, please don't challenge me again on that, but it's fine if you do, that's okay. And I do like Asha's point on culture is strategy for breakfast. I remember reading that book once, for 7 days, and I remained awake one full night, and I didn't know when it became morning, and I created something for my then company. But anyways, but it's great to have multiple views on culture, because there is really no one view. So, thank you for that again, Mr. Parekh, because as you talked, many things got triggered. So the third view after N is equal to 1 and this whole leadership style is, there are 3 or 4 C's, leveraging Senge, which becomes important. One is, are we allowing people to connect to themselves? And many of us talked about helping them create their own purpose. That's very, very critical. That's very, very critical. The second element is about conversations, right? It's very, very critical, because that's when we start unearthing people's aspirations, their issues and dreams, and something that they may be even not aware of. So that's important conversations. The third dimension, which is very, very important, is helping them understand complexity. Today, organizations are changing all the time. So how do you help them understand the complexity, the systemic thinking of an organization, and connect back to it through a very powerful feedback loop, be it on performance, be it on alignment, be it on goals, be it on whatever. So, otherwise people get lost, because I've seen many a times the smarter their leader is, smaller they feel about themselves. It's a very interesting paradox, right? We feel you should have smart, good leaders. Smarter the leaders, they feel smaller, as if we are not good. So it is very important to help them understand the complexity. So these are the 3 C's in my view: connect to self, conversations, and helping them understand complexity can help us, get into the core of things and maybe start finding some solutions.
Super. Neha, finally, yeah.
Yeah, so very interesting to listen to various perspectives on this topic. And Narendra and Sanjay, thank you so much for providing this thought-provoking opportunity.
Yeah, I didn't end up thanking Narendra ji and Sanjay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
I would share my points here based on my work. And last few years, I've been with my own firm doing some work in the area of cultural transformation, diversity, inclusion, and those areas which are very, very, popular now in the organizations. So the first point of view that I have is slightly different than what we've heard so far, because like most of you, I have also worked almost 28, 29 years with organizations which were very solid names, which had long-standing careers and very, very strong culture. So to my mind, culture was that solid bedrock entity of that organization, which has stood the taste of time and so on and so forth. And as I started working with smaller and medium organizations, I realized the fluidity which is there in the culture, which is the dynamism which is now embraced by the organization. So organizations are not really looking at culture as the culture, but more in terms of its fluidity and, shall I say, dynamic nature, where we are talking about our current culture, we are talking about our aspirational culture, we are talking about how we are moving from point A to point B, and that itself sort of brings in the fluidity which I experienced, particularly in last few years. And I think it was strongly fueled by the environment and the situation that we were in. Because of the pandemic and the economic slowdown, which was there ahead of that or before that, all these factors actually fueled the competition to a very great height. And then therefore, it was very, very essential for medium-paced organizations to find their competitive advantage in order to sustain and actually build that competitive edge through the culture in these difficult times. And that's where they sort of started looking up to the people like us who are in the consulting field, that how would therefore they would grab this opportunity to actually move or transition to a culture which in turn builds an advantage for them in this competitive time. And in that endeavor, what I found working was a simple grid where how do you really make this transition work for this organization, or how do you, sort of facilitate that journey for them? Simple 4-box model where we're talking about having established, your aspirational goals for the culture. How do you sort of set up the enabling processes and what Bhaskar called as rituals? What sort of symbols you want to create for the employees so that they are able to, they are empowered or they are powered to move to the new situation which we are trying to visualize for them, and so that they are empowered to move in that direction. What sort of language do you create in the organization? And nowadays, social media, the communication strategy, the way the conversations are taking place, like Karmishta mentioned, all those things are the third bucket or the third block in which we can put in efforts to move from the present state of culture to the aspirations. And the fourth powerful bucket, of course, is that of creating and sharing powerful stories. The technology today, the employee portals, the various engagement platforms, all of that are partnering in this journey in terms of creating that ecosystem together with these 4 building blocks. And that is how I have actually experienced, building a competitive advantage by moving from the current cultural state to the aspirational one. So I just thought I'll summarize my experience, which I've.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Okay, so Karmistha, you talked about individualized experience, N is equal to 1. Then you talked about leadership style matching with employee experience, and then 3 Ps. Tell me, and you are Chief Learning Officer, and I know you that you have been in learning field, so to speak, for quite some time. So what are your takeaways regarding is there something called good or bad culture? And, organizational culture should be necessarily specific to the organizational context and aligned to the vision, mission, and goals.
Yeah, so thanks, Sanjay. And you may or may not recall, because I left business a while back, but the first 15 years of my career, I've been in business, right? So when I look at culture, I essentially look at sort of both the lens on the HR side as well as from the business side. See, I think it's very difficult to align culture to mission, vision, values in that sense in isolation, right? But I think it little bit works the other way around. So to give you examples of organizations, earlier I used to say that for you to really drive any change or any transformation and align, you leverage the DNA of the organization. So one of my earlier organizations, which was an MNC, a very large MNC, right? But they were struggling in India for 13 years to be profitable. One of the largest MNCs of the world. But then comes a new leader and he defines a new way of working as far as the business is concerned and got everyone aligned to that new ways of working, right? So in my view, culture is about, if you have to align it to mission and vision, and currently I'm in an organization which is pretty much trying to do something which I would never imagine an organization would like to do, is changing the DNA, the hardest. I always used to give gyan to people earlier, Zada mat karo, leverage the DNA, and that's about it. But now I realize, no, that's not the end of the world. It is also about changing the DNA. So to your point, is there a correlation between the two? Yes, but it's a little bit of a chicken and egg story. But yes, to give you a simple answer, I think what works is if you have defined your strategy, if you have defined your values, if you have at least these two things in place, right? And then you have to constantly work at sending messages as to how you want behaviors of people to change through your reviews mechanism, through your conversations, through the messages that you send as leadership. And on one hand, and at the same time, demonstrate significant care for your employees on the other. Balancing the two is not easy. So I'm giving you, two examples where the business was in a very dire straits, but when the DNA got leveraged, it came back to shape. In the other scenario, the business was doing well, but it had to really suddenly, move up the value chain significantly, grow exponentially. There, changing the DNA became a mantra. Both scenarios, one thing which I've seen is common: set your goals, get your values right, and incorporate, institutionalize the new ways of working slowly but steadily through your reviews, through your messaging, through your performance management, as well as, very importantly, conversations. And this is the time when you have to demonstrate absolute care for your people as well.
Yes, of course, it goes without saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rituraj, you are a seasoned HR professional, and I mean, as I can make out, from your resume, that you have invested a lot in people development, and you are highly people oriented. So tell us from your experience that, often we talk about Google, Netflix, etc., and Microsoft, Bhaskar mentioned, it is fresh in my mind, as a great culture, and think to emulate them. Is cultural benchmarking really helpful? You'll have to unmute. Dr. Merpari, can somebody unmute Rituraj? Next, I'll go to Samir. Dr. Merpari, next Samir, and then Neha.
Sure.
No.
They can themselves, they are made, I think, a host. They can do it, no?
No, he's not able to do. There's some.
Rashmita, hello, you can unmute Rituraj and Samir ji, please.
I can unmute myself.
Samir has done. Rituraj, please. Rituraj.
Yes.
Yeah. Say once they are, and kindly make them co-host, madam, so that this problem should not come. Okay.
Yeah, Rituraj, please
So
go ahead.
interesting question, and it's an excellent question because many times we tend to see, okay, fine, what are some of these indicators? What are those guidelines? What are those goalposts towards our ambition to make our culture more vibrant, that we can actually draw inspiration from? So we end up, of course, benchmarking against some of the better known culture companies. But interestingly, what we at Lupin have found out is that while benchmarking is good in one sense, but if we really need to benchmark, we need to benchmark against the expectations of employees as the employees are changing in terms of, call them Z or millennials or Gen Z or whatever. Interesting things that we have observed as shifts that have happened, and we need to be very, very awake to that, is number one, no longer we are now looking at loyalty factor, because gone are the days when employees were asked for loyalty. Now we are looking for interest factor of employees. So the clear shift is from loyalty factor to interest factor for this bunch of employees that we are talking about, today's employees. Next, we used to speak about commitment from employees, and now we need to offer convenience to employees. We need to understand convenience for employees. COVID has taught us a lot on this front. So we have to shift gear from commitment to convenience, from loyalty to interest factor. Interest used to be hobbies and interests deep down somewhere in the bottom of the resume. Now it is the first question being asked, what are your interest areas? Because the areas where you have interest, you will develop expertise in, and we need your expertise and not really anything else, not your loyalty in that sense. So whether you work for 1 year or 10 years, do you have that beautiful expertise that you can offer to us? Third shift that has happened is from continuity. We're not looking at continuity of employees in that sense, but we're looking for offering them adventure of learning, contributing, and growth. So shift from continuity, continuing experiences, attrition, engagement, goals, etc. Think of past. Now, are we able to offer adventure enough? That will automatically give them that experience that will make them stay on until they feel fulfilled. And fourth and final shift that we are seeing in trend is no more compromise. Employees are not willing to compromise. They are spoiled with choice. So they are exercising their choice. If nothing else, a startup is always there. And therefore, we need to offer choice to employees and not really expect compromise from them. So shift from loyalty to interest. That is what we are respecting. Shift from commitment to convenience, shift from continuity to adventure, and shift from just expecting them to compromise around our value system, around norms and ways of working and culture and whatever you may like to call it, to offer choice to employees in various ways that we can offer to them. And this all is actually showing in terms of benchmark in our planning of doing small little things about building culture in organization. It goes on as you can never claim to have arrived on that front, but obviously it's a continuous sport and we keep working on it. But very excited because we have recognized this, that we are not engagement managers, we are experience managers. Each one of us is an experience manager. I'm not talking about only L&D or HR or something. I'm saying every single manager in the company is actually an experience manager and not engagement manager. I would stop here.
Yeah. So Sajay, can I just add one more point as Rituraj was speaking? So it is also about, this mission, vision, values. I think another shift, since Rituraj was talking about shift, is actually moving from the mission, vision of the company. More importantly than that is the purpose of the company, right? So if we are being able to resonate with the purpose, that's where I think the alignment to the change that you were thinking of could be faster.
Great. So I was about to ask Rituraj when he talked about, long innings. Okay, are these the magic bullets like you talked about, all these loyalty to interest areas and expertise, etc., etc. Are these the magic bullets for long innings?
Absolutely. It's no rocket science. The moment that you spend in the company, do you feel like getting up in the morning and going for work? Now, that's the question we need to ask ourselves when we are. So don't take a person for granted if he has spent a decade with you, because there is no guarantee he'll spend another decade with you. You need to make sure that the experience he is getting this morning with you is full of learning, growth, and contribution opportunities for him. And that's where sense of adventure has actually got to be very, very high. Obviously, fast growth context does help in the process.
My question was pertaining to benchmarking. Okay, so if you could, so basically, okay, I can understand all these things. How do you actually implement these concepts?
So we do not actually benchmark against external companies beyond a certain point. We of course get some fresh ideas, some insights. For example, there are companies that do only training for any meeting for 20 minutes. Now that's a famous folklore. Now that's not the way we've been able to actually practice. We have our meetings that have got their own time schedule, and we make sure that we are not missing any good point in that meeting. So we don't have, in that sense, benchmarking as an obsession, but we are definitely continuously benchmarking against the current generation employees' expectations. Our benchmark is with them and not really with our competitors or coexisting companies, to answer your question.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Samir, I mean, I would consider you as a versatile genius, so to speak. Chartered accountant, PhD in HR, and have been hardcore salesman. you have sold insurance products. So, my question to you is, what mix of cultural fit? I mean, Seema talked about cultural fit. Okay. So my question to you is, what mix of cultural fit and cognitive diversity is optimum for teams in an organization for driving both efficiency as well as innovation?
So firstly, I think two terms have got very, very oddly juxtaposed, or at least that's how I see them. Cultural fit and cognitive diversity aren't really competing with each other. They're actually, they need to be together, right? I mean, this is like saying that I am only a left brain person or I'm only a right brain person. We are not, right? We are both brain persons all the time. It's what you are giving priority to. The question is, but when we look at cultural fit, and I believe, I mean, when we broadly, at the risk of contradicting myself, saying that when culture eats strategy, when we put it at a very broader sense, we are basically saying that culture is an overarching overarching metric that is going to help us to take certain decisions, which means our decision to retain, our decision to hire, all of this needs to fall into the cultural bracket. Now, culture is also changing. Culture is also changing. Change is obvious, right? We are all changing, everybody's changing. But is this change something that can be managed? Can I create that change? I can do it if I am also continuously hiring. Attrition is a given. We all know that. In the present millennial, trying to change that attrition and trying to pull it back, you may be able to do a percentage point here or there, and all of it comes at a very huge cost. Rather than that, I would go with what Rituraj is saying and say that you align to their expectations, create enough interest, create enough challenge. That part of what I'm trying to create is actually coming from cognitive diversity. Do you realize that? What I'm trying to create is coming from my cognitive diversity. But at the same time, what am I doing? I'm trying to fit that into my culture. So they're not two different things. They're actually two parts of the same, which I'm trying to work with. So, and I think today, and in the industries that I'm working with, I'm seeing obviously there is a huge shift in terms of age groups. There is a huge shift in terms of the technologies that people are being used to, the struggles that we have with, I mean, children nowadays are getting born with, I think, their ability to manage smartphones. and we still struggle with apps, right? So those abilities have changed, and our ability to be able to manage those changed abilities. And I think at some point of time, with our gray hair and balding heads, we need to understand that it's not about us being better than them that allows us to manage them. It's about what we have experienced, learned, and are ready to share. again, going back to your question, therefore, that sharing, that is continuously therefore evolving my strategy, but I have to do it consciously, which means I'm doing using cognitive diversity. So to answer your question, they're both the two parts of the same thing.
Great, superb. I mean, we are living in the era of please.
संजय जी, आपका टाइम हो गया अभी?
नहीं टाइम है अभी मेरा सर 48 हुआ है अभी और अभी 10-15 मिनट का टाइम है सर प्लीज।
नहीं 7 बजे बंद, 7 बजे का ना क्लोज।
7 बजे हम कर देंगे अभी बस। So Neha, I mean, you have led many sort of center of excellence in multinational company. So tell us that, how can board members and senior management team can drive the deployment of organizational culture? And we talked about, the role of various layers, so to speak. So from your experience, please enlighten us.
Yeah. So essentially, I think the board has a very, very powerful role to play in setting and monitoring the corporate culture. I think two clear mechanisms by which the boards are handling this in different companies is that they have the right to appoint and dismiss the CEO. So that's their primary sort of, prerogative or role that they can execute. If they are finding that the CEO, he or she is not fully embodying the corporate culture. And that has got several manifestations. The values and the behaviors of the CEO, are they actually aligning in the process of creating the value for the stakeholders, for which essentially the board is responsible for in the short term, medium term, and the long term, and how this value creation is being effectively delivered, how this is being incentivized as such. That is something, the board is very much mindful about all the time. The second set of mechanism is, of course, through the governance structure and processes that the board has under its sleeve. And then there are 5 or 6 specific mechanisms through which this is handled. The first is how the board is ensuring that there is openness and accountability in the organization. The second is there are few functions which board ensures that they are very powerfully resourced. The voice of these departments is very strongly strengthened in the process of assessing what is going on, as a part of the culture. And which are these departments? HR, internal audit, ethics and governance, and risk management. So these 4 functions, the board, have very close proximity. All these 4 functions report to the board from time to time. The whistleblower effects and so on. So that's the second way by which, board would typically have a good grip on, whether the desired culture is flowing in the right direction. The third aspect I would say is in terms of the performance and reward systems, So what are we trying to incentivize in this culture? What sort of behaviors are incentivized? And is there a situation where, wrong behaviors are, going scot-free or being, incentivized? So those are other set of processes through which the board is holding on to their power of governance. I think overall, the risk appetite that the enterprise has, and is it taking the enterprise in a particular direction too much in terms of maximizing the profit, and in the process, are we compromising on some of these processes? Is something the board is always looking for, or is very vigilant about. So I think all in all, these 4 or 5 mechanisms help the board to make sure that the desired corporate culture is delivering the right set of values for the stakeholders. That's my observation and experience.
Thanks a lot, Neha. Sir, thanks a lot. being patient with me. Okay. So back to you. With your permission, can I ask one question to all the panelists?
Yeah, you can ask.
Okay. So my question is that, are great cultures too much skewed towards compliance and good corporate citizenship and less towards response, speed, and innovation? Anybody can choose to answer.
Combination of both.
Okay, you said both. Okay.
Combination of both. We'll hear from Bhaskar.
I have spent nearly 12 to 13 years of my career in nonprofits, and I've been on boards on various occasions. One thing I realize is how people in the organization treat each other, not based on the citizenship or membership, but general as human beings. That is a very critical part. I was part of a multilateral bank where I was a consultant and I had to go to Manila to do this kind of a work. And I was shown all the time a particular chair in which I have to sit because I'm an external consultant, right? And every country has a representation in the bank, and a particular country will have the head of the table, and other countries will be seated in designated spots. Whether the person comes or not, those seats will be marked for those positions or countries. So you tell a culture of the organization by the way they are treating their people, whether they are employees or outsiders, right? I had a pleasure of working with another company, which is a multinational, global multinational, FMCG, where again, I was a consultant. I was helping them with the strategy of shared service org design. And they made me part of the town hall. And they made me ask questions, how I feel, how I experience the culture, how I was treated on the floor. So I could participate and play games when the employees were having their fun time. That was phenomenal experience for me. I never felt as if I'm a consultant wearing a different colored tag. I was part of the family and I could think about them while recommending solutions, not like something I'm doing to them. So I think that's the great shift. People are, even Mr. Rituraj, you spoke about employee experience. That's the key. It's not employee engagement anymore. And that's where N is equal to 1, which Karmista spoke about. I think these are the things which are important right now, Sanjay ji. Thank you.
Yes, Sanjay ji, आपका हो गया पूरा?
मेरा हो गया पूरा. Over to you. Back to you, sir.
Anyhow, the subject is very, what you call, very exhaustive, and there can be any number, but point is in a reasonable time how all the speakers have brought very relevant topics to the audience or the participant. And I'm grateful to the participant for their, what you call, large number remained until end, because somebody also giving me that we must have shorter duration webinar. So that is because of the fact when that will remain more in their memory also. So now after the formal vote of thanks by Sanjay Gale, I will again come back. So Sanjay ji.
Thank you. So, I tried to scribble points, but poor me, I failed miserably. So I am not going to kind of, tell you that, what all you said and all that. I would simply, I'm really thankful to you people. I would start right from Dr. Asha Bhandarkar, Mr. Vuller, Bhaskar, dear friend, Yatin could not make it this time. Seema, Karmista, thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks. I mean, in very short notice, she was in London, okay, and she readily agreed. Rituraj, I mean, really grateful. Thanks to you. Samir Parikh, I can take you for granted anytime. I know. And Neha. Well, so thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody. Okay.
And thank you. Dr. Asha Bhandarkar has mentioned two of the books, and I definitely suggest that we should purchase. And also the role of the board, which is written by Dr. Preetap Singh and Dr. Bandarkar, I have already read. So another one she has already mentioned in her speech, that is, I think, Millennials and the Workplace. I also went through some of the book today. So one which for our own subject I got was Build Organizational Culture for Competitive Advantage by James Heskett. I think that book is very, very relevant. And also, of course, another book I saw, Gutsy Leaders Brand Their Cultures. Again, this book, of course, is from the guts, the companies that blow the door of business as usual. So Kinin and Jackie, I think, Jackie Friedberg. So, and I saw around 20 books recommended only on culture. But I could not, some of the points I noted, but because of the time, but very powerful messages are there. Even in a brief about the powerful note, each of them were very impressive. So I think every one of us has a responsibility as an organization to remain true to its mission or true to its core values, and in our own humble way, whether we are at the leadership level, board level, or at the grassroots level, every endeavor has to be made to see that we do not bring hurdle or any impediments, and we do not destroy in a way. So that always I believe in value creation, value preserving, value enhancement, and those values will get what you call the company going from strength to strength. So there are Build to Last. That is another book where all what you call visionary companies created that cultural values. So that I remembered one concept of BAG, that is built that is BAG goals, big, hairy, audacious goals. So when the company has to have a bigger, and everybody should be a compelling reason, and it should be a daring and with their own way, because every leader has that other one that he has been brought it to bring performance. So the performance is the outcome, culture and the human engagement and their welfare is the means. With this, I once again thank Dr. Asha Bhandarkar and all the distinguished panelists and all our participants for their wholehearted support to make this program a grand success. We are also grateful to our supporter in a low support, that is Varadman Debenture Trust Limited, a new company which has been got the permission from SEBI to start debenture trustee business, because as a debenture trustee also they have to ensure today in this very difficult period, some of the default and all, they have to ensure that the company value proposition is really communicated to the investors in a way so that they protect the interest of the shareholders. And I also thank A1 Logistics and Rakshmita and all and Praveen Udupa for giving the backup support. And also I thank Priyanjali who introduced the participant. Thank you. Good night. We'll meet again and again. All the best.
Thanks, Dr. Meher Pari. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
We'll end the meeting, sir.
Yes. We'll end the meeting.